Forgiveness is the principle behind step 9. And somewhere we were supposed to write brotherly love as, I guess you could write it there, brotherly love, step 8. Brotherly love, step 8, forgiveness, step 9. So do you think that his ex-wife would have reacted the same way if he would have sent a letter saying, hey, sorry, I'm going to try to do better, and he hadn't put any money in there? No, he took action and he sent some money, so she knew that he meant business. Before, I guess at the top of page 80, write 9th step instructions, just by that first paragraph there. 9th step instructions. And there are a lot of them. They're all over here. Before taking drastic action which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. Okay, so highlight to the end of the paragraph. If we have obtained permission, have consulted with others, asked God to help, and the drastic step is indicated, we must circle must, not shrink. Right? So for example, right? I mean, if you, let's say that you perpetrated some illegal activity with, say, maybe 2 or 3 other people, right? Now, if you go to the authorities and turn yourself in, these other people will be implicated as well, right? Well, can we do that, right? Again, we've got to talk to our sponsor. We've got to secure their consent. If you're going to go and do something which might get you thrown in jail for 30 days, right? You would better talk to your family about that. What's going to happen? You're not going to, oh my God, we're not going to be able to make our rent. You know, how is this going to affect the kid? You've got to consult other people that are going to be affected by what you do. And you really, this is the step where you've got to have a sponsor's help, and even maybe more than a sponsor, maybe somebody that's done what you think you have to do. This brings to mind a story about one of our friends. While drinking, he accepted a sum of money from a bitterly hated business rival. Giving him no receipt for it, he subsequently denied having received the money and used the incident as a basis for discrediting the man. He's thus used his own wrongdoing as a means of destroying the reputation of another. In fact, his rival was ruined. So next to that whole paragraph, we're going to write selfish in big letters. Selfish, among other things. He felt that he had done a wrong he could not possibly make right. If he opened that old affair, he was afraid it would destroy the reputation of his partner. So he's got a new partner, right? Disgrace his family, his wife and kids, and take away his means of livelihood. What right had he to involve those dependent upon him? How could he possibly make a public statement exonerating his rival? So if he went and did this, his business partner might face ruin, and his wife and kids would face ridicule, and possibly he'd lose his livelihood and they'd be out in the street. After consulting with his wife and partner, he came to the conclusion that it was better to take those risks than to stand before his Creator guilty of such ruinous slander. Highlight the next 3 lines. He saw that he had to place the outcome in God's hands, or he would soon start drinking again, and all would be lost anyhow. Okay, so off to the left, we're going to write, must take action, or we might drink, arrow, death. For many of us, to start drinking again is to die. Must take action, or we might drink, little arrow, and the word death. Right? Even if you don't think, if I relapse, I'm going to be okay. Well, you might end up crashing your car and dying and killing somebody else. We just don't know. Must take action, or we might drink, arrow, death. He attended church for the first time in many years. After the sermon, he quietly got up and made an explanation. His action met widespread approval, and today he is one of the most trusted citizens of his town. This all happened years ago. Put a little line under a go, and we're going to write 4th type, spouse or domestic. 4th type, spouse or domestic. The chances that we have the chances are that we have domestic troubles. Perhaps we are mixed up with women in a fashion we wouldn't care to have advertised. We doubt if, in this respect, alcoholics are fundamentally much worse than other people. But drinking does complicate sex relations in the home. After a few years with an alcoholic, a wife gets worn out. Okay, underline these 3 words: resentful and uncommunicative. Underline that, and off to the right, we're going to write Al-Anon. Right? We've got to ask if our domestic partners are willing to go get Al-Anon help, because anybody that is around an alcoholic becomes sick themselves. They're very, very. I mean, you stay with an alcoholic for years, and you're going to need help to get better yourself, right? And a lot. I heard a woman talking just on Saturday night. She when she first went to Al-Anon. Her husband says she's got a black belt in Al-Anon. But when she first went to Al-Anon, she thought she was going there to figure out how to fix her husband. Right? She walked through the door and she said, "Oh no, we're going to give you. You're here to get help yourself. You're here for yourself, to get yourself help." And she was so relieved to hear that, because she was all messed up, man, all messed up. And I've been to a few Al-Anon meetings. I do have practicing alcoholics, 2 brothers, and I like it. And these guys work the 12 steps just like us, right? Resentful and uncommunicative. How could she be anything else? The husband begins to feel lonely, sorry for himself. He commences to look around in the nightclubs or their equivalent for something besides liquor. Perhaps he is having a secret and exciting affair with the girl who understands. In fairness, we must say that she may understand, but what are we going to do about a thing like that? A man so involved often feels, underline, very remorseful, just a little remorseful there at times, especially if he is married to a loyal and courageous girl who has literally gone through hell for him. So again, when we're doing 8 and 9, one of the benefits is our shame, our guilt, our remorse. We're going to start to take care of these things. Whatever the situation, we usually have to do something about it. If we are sure our wife does not know, should we tell her? Not always, we think. Again, we counsel with our sponsor. If she knows in a general way that we have been wild, should we tell her in detail? Undoubtedly, we should admit our fault. She may insist on knowing all the particulars. She will want to know who the woman is and where she is. We feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person. We are sorry for what we have done. And, underline, God willing, it shall not be repeated. Just that little phrase there, God willing, it shall not be repeated. And then we're going to write something off to the right. When we make amends, we must never do the wrong again. When we make amends, we must never do the wrong again. Right? That's what we did when we're drinking. Oh, I'm so sorry this happened. I'm so sorry, it's not going to happen again. And what do? We turn around and we do the same damn thing. Right? We are now sober. We are now working these steps and living a different life. When we make amends, we must never do the wrong again. Right? So we go to somebody that we stole from and we pay them back. We're not going to steal again. Right? We go to our spouse, they know about it, we tell what we did, we're never going to do it again. We're not going to do it again. More than that, we cannot do. We have no right to go further, though there may be no justifiable exceptions, and though we wish to lay down no rule of any sort, we have often found this the best course to take. Our design for living is not a one-way street. It is good for the wife as for the husband. If we can forget, so can she. It is better, however, that one does not needlessly name a person upon whom she can vent jealousy. Perhaps there are some cases where the utmost frankness is demanded. No outsider can appraise such an intimate situation. It may be that both will decide that the way of good sense and loving kindness is to let bygones be bygones. Each might pray about it, underline, having the other one's happiness uppermost in mind. All right, that's another instruction. Keep it always in sight that we are dealing with that most terrible human emotion, underline, jealousy. Good generalship may decide that the problem be attacked on the flank rather than risk a face-to-face combat. So off to the left, we're going to write important that both of you agree and move on. Important that both of you agree and move on. And I've heard situations where, one of the spouses has made the amends and they're never going to do it again, and then the other spouse, just keeps bringing it up over and over and over, you both got to agree upon it, and if you're going to stay together, you got to move on. If you're not going to stay together, then fine. But the other one, if they go to Al-Anon, I think that they're not going to keep using these things over and over and over and over and over. At least hopefully not. Draw a little line under flank, rather. Just a little line and write, fifth type, family. Fifth type of amend is the family. If we have no such complication, there is plenty we should do at home. Underline the next 6 lines. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic say that the only thing he needs to do is keep sober. Certainly he must keep sober, for there will be no home if he doesn't. But he is yet a long way from making good to the wife or parents whom for years he has so shockingly treated. Just that line there. So they're telling us that we've got to do more than just not drink. Passing all understanding is the patience mothers and wives have had with alcoholics. Had this not been so, many of us would have no homes today, would perhaps be dead. Okay, let's underline the next 6 lines. The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections have been uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. Stop highlighting there. Off to the left, we're going to write, we hurt more. We hurt more than ourselves. A lot of us come into these rooms and think, I'm the one I hurt by all this drinking. Nonsense. We hurt more than ourselves. At the bottom of the page, we're going to write, make direct amends as well as living amends. And I'll talk about that a little bit when I'm done with some notes here if we got time. Make direct amends as well as living amends. We have hurt more than ourselves. Make direct amends as well as living amends. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. He is like the farmer who came up out of his cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. To his wife he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand? The wind stopped blowing." Yes, there is a long period of reconstruction ahead. We must take the lead. A remorseful mumbling that we are sorry won't fill the bill at all. Underline 3 lines. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. So next to that, we're going to write, never criticize or insult. Never criticize or insult. If you damn kids would have behaved, no, we don't do that. We ought to sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being careful, very careful not to criticize them. Never criticize or insult. Their defects may be glaring, but the chances are that our own actions are partly responsible. Underlined at the end of the paragraph. So we clean house with the family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. Highlight that, and next to it write 9-step prayer. Now, I don't have a family. Not a wife and kids. I got brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews. But I say that prayer every morning. That's one of the ones I say. My Creator, please show me the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. Underline the next line as well. The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. That means we're going to have to do stuff. We do stuff on a daily basis. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live upon spiritual principles, we think we ought not to urge them. We should not talk incessantly to them about spiritual matters. They will change in time. Underline this next sentence. Our behavior will convince them more than our words. Underline that, and next to it write action. Action. When people come up and they say, "How are you doing, John?" I don't want to answer with them with how I'm feeling. Well, I'm not feeling very well today. How are you doing? Well, you know what? I asked God for direction this morning. I was on time at work. I treated people with respect and courtesy, and I pulled my weight today. I'm trying to help other people. I'm doing fine, right? I'm doing. How are you doing? It's action. We must remember that 10 or 20 years of drunkenness would make a skeptic out of anyone. Underline this next little line here. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. Just that little line there. We are sorry about them. Underline if. We can honestly, circle honestly, say to ourselves that we would right them if, underline if, we could. And next to that, write the big if. Because we alcoholics are going to find stuff in this book and then we're going to use it as a loophole. And that's one of us. That's the big if. So we're going to talk to our sponsors. There may be some wrongs we can never fully right. We don't worry about them if we can honestly say to ourselves that we would right them if we could. Some people cannot be seen. We send them an honest letter. And there may be a valid reason for postponement in some cases, underlined at the end of the paragraph. But we don't delay if it can be avoided. We should be sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble without being servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our feet. We don't crawl before anyone. Okay, so next to that, again, write 9th step instructions. 9th step instructions. And then where it says if we're going to, now, let's see, 9th step instructions. Then we're going to highlight the first 2 lines, and we're going to write 9th step promises, right? These are the ones that we read at every meeting. So let's highlight. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. Just that little bit right there. And we're right above where it says this phase, right? The amends phase. Right? That's what they're talking about. These promises are going to hit us when we're doing these amends. And by the way, my sponsor taught me, and everybody, all the great giants that have gone before me, they say, once you have made a couple of amends, you're good to sponsor somebody. You go out and make 2 amends, you can start taking somebody through this book and saving their life. Right? And that's what I did. Not, when my sponsor said, you raise your hand, right when I was at this point, and I raised my darn hand, and that fella named Eric tapped my shoulder and scared the hell out of me, right? But I did it. At the bottom of the page, we're going to write, are there any amends? And this is for people that have that have gone through the steps already. Are there any amends we can make right now that we haven't done? Right? And dad burn it, you know what? I got some. I could drive to St. Cloud and find this guy, and I've got to do it. Are there any amends we can make right now that we haven't done? I got to find Mike Wander up in St. Cloud, and I got to make an amend for friendship abandonment. Are there any amends we can make right now that we haven't done? Must do them to be free. Must do them to be free. Right? This is where the miracle really happens, man. Are there any amends we can make right now that we haven't done? Must do them to be free. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we'll be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. Underline this next little sentence. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Just that line. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Underline these 5 words. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. Underline, we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. So we're going to write a few things at the top of the page, right? So let's write selfishness equals I want what I want. Selfish equals I want what I want. Selfish equals I want what I want. Self-seeking equals I want you to think of me the way I want you to, not the way I really am. Selfish, I want what I want. Self-seeking equals I want you to think of me the way I want you to, not the way I really am. I'm going to run around like a bat out of hell trying to make you think I'm somebody I'm really not, right? Self-seeking, I want you to think of me the way I want you to, not the way I really am. And where we underline that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear, we're going to write, I am not a victim. I am not a victim. I blamed everybody else, man, for my problems. But you know what? I am responsible now. I am not a victim. Where we underline self-seeking will slip away, write helping others. Helping others. And where we underline, we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we cannot do for ourselves. We're going to write pray and trust in God. Pray and trust in God. Selfish, I want what I want. Self-seeking, I want you to think of me the way I want you to, not the way I really am. I'm not a victim, helping others, pray and trust in God. Okay, so I got some notes here. So we make this list, the Step 8 list, right? And we pray for willingness. Now, one way I was taught to do this, right? Because we've got amends, man, that it's kind of crazy. So if one thing I was taught is that you can separate your eight step list, right? Family and friends, right? Able to do right now. So you do the ones you're able to do right now. Then you can either do with little difficulty or the maybes. The not yets. So do with little difficulty. So we have do right now, the not yets, and then the difficult to do are the maybes, right? And then we've got the nevers. And the giants that taught me say by the time you do the ones that you're able to do right now, right? Then you're gonna do the ones that you have marked for later with little difficulty. By the time you do them, you're gonna do the maybes. Yeah, maybe I will, maybe I won't. And by the time you're done with them, you're gonna be able to do the nevers. Remember, God's gonna give us the willingness to do it. It's our job to make the list, make it like this. By the time we get to those nevers, I think that God's gonna give us the willingness to do it. So the 8th step is a definite step. Some people, I'm never going to make amends to them, right? They hurt me more than I hurt them. Man, we can't do that. We take the names off of our 4th step, the resentment, fear, the sex, and harms. We ask God to help us become willing to the list. We got to remember that self cannot overcome self. We've got to have God's help. Help me be willing. Give me the courage, right? How much courage are we going to get from God to do this? Barely enough. Barely enough to get started, right? So again, we got the now, the later, the maybe, the never, or how we did it here. Now, maybe, later, never. And again, if we're painstaking about this phase of our development, that's where we're going to get these good promises here. The 3 dimensions of life. We are spiritually sick, right? Right here, we're spiritually sick. That means that we're in disharmony with God. We are in disharmony with God. We're powerless over alcohol. Our lives are unmanageable. So the spiritual dimension, steps 1, 2, and 3, they get me right with God. I move from powerless over alcohol, my life's unmanageable, to power, right? So the spiritual dimension. The 2nd dimension, we're mentally sick, right? The mental dimensions. We've got a mind, but our mind, if it's filled with resentment, fear, anger, guilt, remorse, and we act to protect the basic instincts of life. We act to protect our to save face, to save money, to save our sex lives. We cause our own problems, right? So we are mentally sick, right? And we're mentally sick. Steps 4, 5, 6, and 7, they get me right with me. Takes care of the mental dimension. The third dimension is the physical dimension. Maybe that's my body, but no. The physical dimension is the world around us, right? Not just our bodies, but the world around us. And we have been in disharmony with others and the world around us, right? These steps are going to put us back together, and they're going to make us well in all three dimensions. So 1, 2, and 3 get me right with God. I move from powerless to power. 4, 5, 6, and 7, we get right in our mind. We get rid of resentments, fears, but we still have the guilt, shame in our little storeroom 7-Eleven head based upon things we've done in the past. So to get right in the physical world, we have to make restitution, right? Now, many of us feel so good after 4, 5, 6, and 7, we think we don't have to do anything. Okay, what we're feeling after 4 and 5 is relief. What we want to feel is recovery. That's what we want. We're not going to get recovery until we do steps 8 and 9. If we don't do steps 8 and 9, the guilt and remorse, it's going to start to chew at us, right? We're going to start to get restless, irritable, discontent. After a while, it begins to bother our relationship with others and the world and everybody in it. It's going to start to block us off from God. We're going to start to, and we don't feel good. We're going to start to remember the ease and comfort that comes by taking just a couple of drinks, and we're going to get drunk all over again. So we've got to go for more than just relief. And I know plenty of people, they get done with 4 and 5 and they feel so good that that's where they stop. They don't go further, man. And even if they manage to stay sober, they're screwing themselves because you get those promises that we read when you're doing these amends. Now, remember the foreword to the second edition. You don't got to go there. The foreword to the second edition. See if I can find the page here. Well, it's about when Dr. Bob, it's when Bill Wilson went to Akron, and he met Dr. Bob. So in the foreword to the second edition, it looks as though once Bill met Dr. Bob never took another drink, right? They met, they started working together, and everything was great, and Bob never had another drink, right? Well, that's not true. Bill was working with Bob for a couple of weeks, and they're talking about the spiritual principles, and Bob's been sober for a couple of weeks. This has never happened before, ever, right? And Dr. Bob says, Bill, I've got a medical convention that I got to go to every year. I got to show up there. They know something's wrong. And so what do you think, Bill? It's in Atlantic City. And Dr. Bob's wife, Ann, said, Bill, don't let him go. Don't let him go. He gets drunk every year. You can't let him go, Bill. And Bill said, nope. We've got to learn how to live in society. We've got to learn how to stand on our own 2 feet. We're going to let him go to that medical convention. He's been sober 2 weeks. He's got to learn how to deal with the world, right? So they put him on the train, and off Bob went. Well, sure enough, Bob got rip-roaring drunk. Went on a 3-day blackout drunk. He came back in the middle of the night. They carried him off the train, and they called his nurse because he didn't have the heart to call his wife. And the nurse came over there, and the nurse called up Ann and Bill and said, come get him. He's drunk, and he's got surgery in the morning, and he's the only one that can do it. Because he was the one that did the previous surgery. He's got to go back in and finish the surgery. Nobody else on staff can do it. So Ann and Bill W. picked him up. They brought him home. They coffeed him. They walked him. They coffeed him all night. They put him to bed. He got a couple hours of sleep, right? And they wake him up, and Bill is sitting there when he wakes up. And Dr. Bob said, Bill, I'm going to go through with it. And Bill thought he was talking about the surgery, but Bob was really talking about the rest of the steps, right? So Bill drove him to the hospital. And Dr. Bob is shaken, and he said, I can't do this. I'm going to kill him. I can't do this, man. Bill reached in the back, grabbed him a couple of bottles of strong beer, said, drink this, you'll be okay. So Dr. Bob drank those 2 bottles of beer. He went upstairs. He performed the surgery. It went well. Bill's down waiting in the parking lot. 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, no Dr. Bob. Bill goes home with Ann, and it's like, damn it, I gave him those 2 beers, and the allergy kicked in. He's off getting drunk again. Why did I give him those 2 beers, right? Bob shows up very late in the evening, and he's sober. And Bill goes, where in the hell were you? You scared the hell out of us. Dr. Bob said, I've been going up and down the street making my amends to those I've harmed. Those bottles of beer were the last that Bob ever had, June 10th, 1935, AA's birthday. Bob had been unwilling to make amends to the people he had harmed because he was afraid they'd find out he was a drunk and he would lose the rest of his medical practice, right? Because they'd find out he was an alcoholic. Well, they already knew he was a drunk. Now, the day Dr. Bob screwed up enough courage to make his amends was the day he took his last drink. And I got to say, if that's good enough for Dr. Bob, it's good enough for me, and that's AA's birthday, June 10th, 1935. So our book tells us we make direct amends wherever possible. It doesn't say whenever possible. If you tell an alcoholic to do something whenever, it'll never get done. So we make direct amends. That means eyeball to eyeball, face to face, person to person, one-on-one. Right? Except when to do so would injure them or others. Now, letters or phone calls, if I send somebody a letter, right, or I talk to them on the phone, I don't see them eyeball to eyeball, so I'm not sure how they took it. And I'm still going to be a little afraid to see these people, right? So we got to do them if we can, one-on-one. We always talk to our sponsor. We've got to get our sponsor's approval and guidance. And when we make the amend, we're thinking, I hope you like me better when we're done. But you know what? The purpose is to set right the wrong and at the same time to take care of my guilt, my shame, my remorse, right? And again, a letter or a phone call, I'm not sure how the person took it. Somebody might say, get out of here, don't come back. Get out. Again, the outcome of the amend is not contingent upon what, their reaction. It's that we did it. And we say, I was wrong, right? We don't bring out what they say. Again, most alcoholics are going to owe money. And many people say, John, if I pay these guys so much a week, do you know how long it's going to take me to pay them off? Do you know how old I'll be when I'm finally done paying them off? And I say, you're going to be the same age you would be if you never paid them back, right? If you just get it done. Right? So we got to use the time to our advantage. And we're going to wake up one day and everything is paid off and you're going to feel great. I paid $704.60 every month for about 60 months. Right? Just finished it up a little while ago. Now there were a couple of other $1,000 payments in there, some other stuff that came up that I'd forgotten about. But after 5 years, I'm done. What a wonderful feeling, right? Wonderful feeling. I recently took step 9, right? And whenever I take a step, I listen to other people and I learn a little bit more. And I always find that there's more to the step than I ever thought or knew. So I learned when I was studied up on step 9 that I've ripped people off emotionally. I have abandoned friendship. People I worked with were terrified of me, right? So when I looked at it, God immediately gave me another 6 names and a lot more followed, right? And my ego is going to tell me that I don't need to go to these people. My ego is going to say, I don't need to do this. They're not even going to remember me. 20 years ago, I stole money from a business that's no longer around. And I was trying to figure out how am I going to take care of that, right? Well, there was a family that was being evicted, a tile setter I knew, and their daughter had cancer. And over Christmas, Thanksgiving, I sent them $500, and at Christmas, I sent them another $500. That was more than I stole. I took care of that one that way. I went to a doctor. I had fooled this doctor into giving me the maximum amount of pain medication that you could get, right? I would go into the doctor's office and the nurse would come out and she'd say, "Can I get you a wheelchair, Mr. Henry?" I'm like, "Yeah, get me a wheelchair." I went to that doctor and when I got done, I was sober about maybe 4 or 5 months, and I didn't even know I was doing it because I wasn't even working the steps. But I went to the doctor, and little did I know that that where I went to detox, he got all the information on what I was using and what I was doing. And I went to the guy for the physical, and I didn't even know I was going to make the amend. He goes, "Oh my God, I thought I killed you." He said, "I read all this stuff. I thought I killed you. I'm so sorry." The doctor's telling me I'm so sorry. And I said, "Doc," I said, "I was the one conning you, man. I came here and I lied to you. I conned you. I was wrong, and I'm here to make amends to you." And I didn't even know. That was just one that came out. Intuitively, I think God put those words in my mouth, and I could see the relief wash over this guy, because he's a healer, right? And he blamed himself for my addiction. How ridiculous. So we do things to put right some wrongs through acts of charity. We send good things out into the universe. We help others. We be kind. We donate, and we give God the credit for everything. Right? When we do these things, we are then able to walk into a storm and help other people. Right? Peacemakers seek disturbance. They seek disturbance out so they can help. We can become spiritual warriors when we do this work. I'm going to really quick, I'm going to reread the promises. Now, I'm going to reread the promises, but I'm going to change some words, and the promises are going to refer to a time in my life when alcohol was my friend, right? When alcohol made me taller, better looking, a great dancer, a great lover, an expert on many subjects. I could talk to the girls, and it was okay for me to be me and come out and play. Back when alcohol was my friend. This is the promises. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I knew a new freedom and a new happiness. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I did not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would comprehend the word serenity and I would know peace. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, no matter how far down the scale I had gone, I could see how my experience would benefit others. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity would disappear. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in my fellows. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, self-seeking would slip away. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, my whole attitude and outlook upon life would change. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, fear of people and of economic insecurity would leave me. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle me. Whenever I took a drink of alcohol, I would suddenly realize that alcohol was doing for me what I could not do for myself. No wonder I liked it. It was magic. It worked for years. But one day, alcohol turned against me. It turned against me, and I couldn't figure what was going on, man. Alcohol took away my relationships. It got me fired, crashed 10 cars, got me thrown in jail, got me cut out of a will, got me disinvited to things that stole my freedom, my health, and my will to live. I wanted to kill myself. I came here. You guys gave me a book and a program of action. I began to apply to my life. And one day I woke up, and I found these promises in my head, and suddenly realized that the first 9 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous are doing for me just exactly what alcohol used to do for me when alcohol was my friend. Only the first 9 steps never turned against me like alcohol. Never been in jail because of the first 9 steps. Never got fired because of the first 9 steps. Never crashed a car because of the first 9 steps. Never wanted to do suicide because of the first 9 steps. Never threw up because of the first 9 steps. Never got the hell beat out of me because of the first 9 steps. Right? All the promises deal with the mind, not the body. We come here restless, irritable, and discontented, filled with guilt, fear, shame, remorse, worry, anger, depression, etc. We work the steps. We receive the promises. Relinquish, this is a prayer from the Dalai Lama, relinquish your envy and your desire to triumph over others. Instead, try to benefit them with kindness, courage, and have confidence that in so doing you will meet with success. Welcome others with a smile as if they are a close friend, and if for some reason you cannot, then do them no harm. Try to help those who are downtrodden. Do not look away from those whose appearance is disturbing. Try not to think of them as less or yourself as better. May we become at all times, now and forever, a protector for those who are without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way. I'm going to end here with the guy. He goes to the doctor and he says, "Doc, I think I'm dying." The doctor says, yeah, you got a bad infection. You're going to die unless you take this penicillin as prescribed in this course of action that I'm going to give you. And I say, well, what if I don't believe the penicillin will work? He says, well, it doesn't matter. If you take it, you're going to get better. Well, what if I don't understand my infection or how the penicillin works? Doesn't matter. If you take it, you're going to get better. What if I don't believe it'll work? It doesn't matter. If you take it, you're going to get better. What if I only take the first 3 days of penicillin and then I take some on the 12th day? You're probably going to die. Doc, how about if I show up at your clinic, these AA meetings, every day for 90 days in a row and watch other people take it, but I don't take it myself? Well, then you're probably going to die, come back when you are closer to death, and you're willing to follow my instructions, right? I was the patient. You guys in the program of action were the doctor in the course of action. So thank you for saving my life. Lastly, steps 8 and 9, we're going to repair our personal relationships. We're going to tell them where we've been at fault. It's a vigorous effort to repair the damage. We never do the thing again. We develop the best relationships we can with other human beings. We lose our loneliness and our isolation from God and other people. And we cannot delay because of fear. The committee in our head is going to tell us that it won't work. The committee is going to tell us it's going to be bad. The committee is going to tell us that it'll cost us, it'll hurt us, it'll damage us, it's going to destroy us. Do not listen to that committee in your head. Talk and work with your sponsor. You do the amends. You get the promises. So let's end with the 7-step prayer and we'll get out of here. Almost on time. 7-step prayer on page 76. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. Amen. All right. Thanks, guys.